Hello, Charles.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Hello.
Calling you in England. It's very early there. Thank you so much. We're speaking with Charles Thomson, who is a writer about popular black music and award-winning writer. And you've suddenly become an expert on Michael Jackson. What happened? You wrote... tell us how this all happened. You're actually an expert on James Brown.
It began really in March when I received a tip-off as to when and where Michael Jackson would be flying into the UK to announce his London concert. I worked with The Sun on that story. We had the exclusive. That tip-off came from someone in Michael Jackson's camp, and they asked me to leak that story for them to the press because they wanted publicity surrounding the concert announcement. After that, I continued to work on Michael Jackson's stories with The Sun, and I was blogging at the same time, but nothing serious. And then when the Evan Chandler suicide was announced in November, I was working on the story with The Sun, and they asked me to send them information about the 1993 allegations, which I did. And I advised them of all the myths, the common myths which appear in the popular media and how they should avoid them. And I sourced all of my information from court documents and audio-visual evidence. And I sent that into The Sun. And when I read the story the next day, it completely discarded all of my information and replaced it with incorrect information. And I was so incensed by that that I wrote a blog about it called Chandler's Suicide Highlights Media Bias Against Jackson. And I guess some fans found it or something, posted it on a fan site, and it got multiplied and multiplied. And within about a month, if you type the title into Google, it was producing 1.5 million websites. And since then, I've just been writing about Michael Jackson for various places since my work became popular.
Would you mind telling us some of these myths that keep getting perpetrated about, well, actually they're lies, they're not myths, about Michael Jackson? And he seems to be the one person in all of history that is suffering the greatest character assassination of anyone else.
It's a character assassination on a scale that we have never seen before. With regard to the myths about 93, there's three key ones. The first is that Jordan Chandler accused Michael Jackson. That's a myth. Evan Chandler accused Michael Jackson, and Jordan Chandler denied it vehemently for months. There's a great investigative journalist called Mary Fisher who wrote a piece for GQ magazine in 1994 called Was Michael Jackson Framed? And she uncovered compelling evidence that the only reason Jordan Chandler ever changed his story was because he'd been administered with a drug called sodium amytal. His father was a dentist, and it's thought that he used this drug as an anesthetic from time to time. And the drug is known to induce false memory syndrome. So Jordan Chandler vehemently denied these accusations until he was administered with this drug, according to Mary Fisher. The second myth is that Jordan Chandler accurately describes Michael Jackson's genitals. That's a total fiction. At the time, he claimed that Michael Jackson was circumcised, and a police body search concluded that he was not, meaning that Jordan Chandler had changed his story and then gotten the description wrong, which pretty much undermined everything that he had to say on the matter. You know, you had a witness who was a proven liar. You know, he's a proven liar because either he was molested or he wasn't, and he's told both stories. One of them has to be a lie. You know, so you have an inherently untrustworthy witness. So the description was inaccurate, and it's widely reported. To this day, it's constantly alluded to as having been correct. It was not correct. It was inaccurate. And the autopsy, which leaked a couple of months ago, again reiterated that Michael Jackson circumcised, whilst Geordie Chandler claimed that he was. The third myth is that Michael Jackson somehow bought his way out of a trial with a settlement. He was never going to stand trial in the first place. People often point to the settlement as the reason that Michael Jackson never stood trial. They neglect to mention that Michael Jackson was under investigation for over half a year before that settlement was ever reached. And with 6 months of investigation, the police never even had enough evidence to arrest him, let alone charge him with a crime. Thomas Snedden, the DA in the case, took his case to 3 separate grand juries, and all of those grand juries refused to allow him to bring charges because his evidence was so feeble. So the media often points to this settlement as saying, oh, Jackson settled because otherwise he would have gone to prison, or Jackson settled because otherwise he would have faced trial. Michael Jackson was never going to face trial. When he settled with the Chandler family, he was not being prosecuted, he was being sued. And by settling with the family, he saved untold amounts of money. That civil suit could have dragged on for years, and not only cost him millions upon millions upon millions in legal fees, but also earnings. The whole time that case was dragging on, he wouldn't have been able to play a concert, he wouldn't have been able to release an album. So those are the 3 myths: that Jordan Chandler was the one who initiated the allegations, that Jordan Chandler accurately described Jackson's genitals, and that Michael Jackson avoided a trial by paying a settlement. And those 3 myths alone are enough to make him look guilty when they're inaccurately reported.
Why do you think that the media persists in this character assassination? What is going on?
I think that there's so many factors, and it's difficult to pinpoint what the primary ones are. I do think that a big part of it is pride. I think that when the 1993 allegations hit, Michael Jackson was typically silent. For much of his adult career, he would not speak to the media, and after 1993 hit was no exception. He gave like a 4-minute speech on television, and that was it. And so consequently, all of the information that the media was receiving was coming from the prosecution, either officially or unofficially. So it's questionable how much of it was reliable, how much of it was accurate. And at the time, it's easy to see how they would have been led to believe that Jackson was guilty because they were only getting one side of the story, and it was quite skewed. I think that as the information started to trickle out, okay, it wasn't actually the boy that made the allegations, it was his dad. Okay, he's on tape threatening to extort Michael Jackson out of millions of dollars. Okay, the boy's got the description wrong. It became increasingly apparent that Jackson was actually not guilty, but the media seemed to have already taken this stance that he was. And there's almost an element of pride about it, like they're completely unwilling to admit that they got it wrong. And I think that's one of the primary factors.
Do you think race has a place here?
I often compare the Jackson case to the case of Jack Johnson, which occurred in the early years of the 1900s. And Michael Jackson's trial occurred in the early years of the noughties. And Jack Johnson's media treatment was undeniably racist, and Michael Jackson's media treatment has been undeniably similar. That's the way I always phrase it. I can't say for sure, no journalist has ever come to me and said, oh, hi, I just wanted to tell you that I am really mean to Michael Jackson because he's black. That's never happened. But Jack Johnson's treatment was undeniably racist, and Michael Jackson's was undeniably similar. It's like a lynching. I don't know if you know the story of Jack Johnson. Some people probably won't. He was the first black heavyweight boxing champion of the world, and he won the title in around 1907 or 1908. And he was treated horrendously because the media and the establishment couldn't accept the idea of a black icon, a black champion. And he was assassinated by the media in almost a blow-for-blow identical way to Michael Jackson, right down to 2 separate allegations of sexual misconduct, the first resulting in a settlement, the second resulting in a trial. he was treated horrendously. They called him names like, well, a lot of racist names that I don't really want to say on the radio, but they also called him Jackie. They used to call him Little Jackie, like a kid.